Welcome to PC Wits Kids Tech Talk. Today we're looking at the ASRock X570 Steel Legend AMD RGB motherboard. That's right, this one here, made for AMD Ryzen CPUs, for example. If you've got one of the third generation 3000 series CPU, well, this one's ready to go. Comes with the polychrome sync support for your RGB pleasure. As you can see right here, we're going to look at it more in detail. Some of the specs that stand out for me, obviously, is supporting the latest processors and that 10 power phase design. So if we want to overclock things, it'll support, keeping up the power demands. The X570 chipset obviously brings us support for not just memory and the technology for overclocking and putting in really fast memory. And I'm talking about like 4,666 megahertz. My gosh, my goodness, where have we gone today that, memory has come so far? I'm just going to be using memory that's 3733 actually, but it'll go even higher depending on your combination of hardware, of course. Maximum capacity 128 GB, as you can see there, and of course it has gold contacts. Now, the audio support, you can see there, the Realtek ALC 1220 and 7.1 channel HD with the fine gold series audio capacitors. Very nice. We're going to look at those as well. I'm looking forward to really getting, the most bang for your buck from this board because it packs a punch. I mean, yes, it has gold audio connectors, and that's great. We want good conductivity going around there. We want fast LAN support with that Intel i2118T LAN, but really I'm looking for this processor, the PCI Express 4.0 that this chipset, that this board brings to us. I'm looking to really get the most we can out of the bandwidth of this when I put the NVMe SSD that I've got in there as well. So I like the fact that they have other M.2 slots, so you can have a Wi-Fi module in there as well. That's great. I love the fact that they added that, so that's a great bonus. And, again, with the gold contacts, yes, that's great to see that they have that. Connectors, I love it. They've got tons of connectors, 8 SATA 3s. They've got the one Hyper M.2 that I mentioned, the PCI Express Gen 4 support, and lots of USB connectors, of course. We need the USB connectors. We can't be without those. So they got USB 3.2. They got two of those, Gen 2 at the back. They got the Type A and Type C. They got 10 USB 3.2 Gen 1s, 4 at the front, 6 at the rear. I mean, my gosh, tons of fan headers. I mean, left, right, and center, you got tons of fan headers. Pause the screen here and you can look through this slowly at your own pleasure. But hey, believe me, you need the fan headers because, when you install all these fans and you got the RGB stuff going, or you got a all-in-one radiator cooler going, you need those, right? And like I said, USB galore, so no problems there. You're going to have tons, including the Type C, which is nice, okay, to have that as well. So, moving along now, obviously it packs the CD in the box with the required ASRock tuning software, and I like using the software for the polychrome sync, right, for the RGB customization in the case, so that's nice always to have. In the box, opening this up, you can see they packed it up really nicely. You get the manuals, right? The quick installation guide, the software setup, the CD. Obviously, you get some SATA cables. Can't live without those, so we need those unless you're using the NVMe M.2 slots. And, of course, they provide the screws for those, so that's very nice. Added bonus there. The board itself, if we navigate through this and do a flyby on it, when you stare at it, I mean, obviously the steel look and feel is really cool. That stands out to me right off the bat. I love that brushed metallic look. Obviously, it's not steel, but it's aluminum, steel alloy mixture. You can see there the capacitors. You can see there the 10 power phase design at work with this Ryzen processor that I slapped in there for you guys to basically review on this machine. There's the Southbridge fan. Yes, they added a little fan on top of that heatsink to cool off that portion of the board, I guess, the chip. And you got the Wi-Fi module there as well. You can see that, and it's sandwiched in between. And there are some more gold capacitors you can see right there for the audio. So, yes, There's quality written all over this board. I do like the color combo that they've got there with that gray, white, and black going on, that steel look and feel. The steel reinforcement, again, on that bracket, the PCI Express slot, very nice. You need that for that heavy graphics card that you install. And again, a closer look at that Wi-Fi M.2 slot there for the Wi-Fi module. So, that's option. It's there in case you need that, so that's nice. And when it comes to the memory, I mentioned that a second ago. Wow, I'm really impressed on the support for memory, and this is something that's a really strong bonus on this board. I really like the support for the DDR4 memory that it's got, and especially the extra power that you can plug in there should you install a really, really extreme AMD CPU in here and need that extra power to really take it to the next level. So it's really nice to have that option in there just in case, so you're future-proofed in a way. At the back, you've got the I/O plate there built in already, and well, there's all the connectors I mentioned to you earlier. You got tons of USB support, and there's your LAN and your audio as well, with the option to add the Wi-Fi plugs as well. Now, what's behind this heatsink, this plate, I guess, the steel that they claim is so cool? Well, there's your other M.2. There's your M.2 slot. It's hidden underneath that, and there's the other M.2 NVMe slot as well. So there you have it. Under that steel piece, you're basically going to have to take this out to install your M.2. Okay, so the system itself, this is what I'm going to be installing on this machine. I did a separate video review on the CPU as well, so I'll add that at the end so you can watch the video on this board with the CPU and other components. The BIOS itself, the UEFI BIOS screens are straightforward, easy to navigate. I was obviously inclined to overclock and test the board features, not just use the XMP settings. Obviously, there's great support for that, but I wanted to push this a little bit and see if there was any issues. None whatsoever. I was able to manually, overclock things, and it was stable. No blue screens of death or anything like that. System didn't lock up. Ran it for a long time on full load, 100%. And we're going to watch those benchmarks in a second. Temperatures, you can see right there in the BIOS, 29 degrees Celsius. That's very, very acceptable, considering that I'm not putting any load on the board right now. We're just navigating through the screens. And great options. Now, when it comes to the motherboard temperature, in Windows 10, doing some benchmarks, you can see here, when it's on idle, it's running roughly about 31 degrees Celsius. When it's on full load, I got the CPU running at 100%. Well, it only went up a degree to 32 degrees. So talk about keeping the motherboard cool. I mean, all of these steel legend colors that you see on the board is not for nothing. These aluminum heat sinks are actually working, and that Southbridge fan is actually doing something. Yes, it might be running a little bit fast at 2000 RPM, but you don't really hear it. You don't feel it. Here we are again in CPU-Z with the X570 Steel Legend from ASRock. You can see there I upgraded the BIOS, and I have the XMP setting set to the defaults right now. And we're going to run some benchmarks here with CPU-Z or Z, and you can see there how it compares with the single thread and multi-thread scores with this Ryzen 3rd generation CPU, the Ryzen 5 3600, running at 3.6 gigahertz, and it goes up to 4.2 gigahertz with the boost enabled. You can see how it compares there on the multi-threaded test, top of the line right there, and they actually beat another default Ryzen 5 that they had tested with this board. So it's very important to note that when you put a combination of a great board like this one with this processor and good quality stable memory, you really can get a boost in performance compared to other mainstream boards. And that's what I'm seeing here. That's the pattern that I'm getting. When I do all these benchmarks, I'm getting performance that is exceeding what you should be getting with this CPU. So I'm getting quality results. So that's really what I want to see with a board like this. When it comes to the ADA cache memory, read, write, copy, and latency, you can see there also great results. To reinforce that a little bit, I ran additional benchmarks such as this one here and compared it online to other systems, other processors. And again, I'm very, very pleased with these results. Sure, it's not like a high-end system, but that's not what I'm trying to show you guys here. keep in mind that this board costs less than $200 US. So you've got a CPU that costs less than $200 US, you've got a graphics card that costs less than $200 US, and now a board that costs less than $200 US. Do you see a pattern here? You're getting great performance, you're spending less, and you can push this even further than the default clock speeds. You can overclock it. And I was able to overclock this machine to 4.225 gigahertz, so 4.2 plus change, and it ran constantly, all 6 cores, 12 threads at that speed. So I'm going to make a separate video on how I overclocked it, because that's actually quite more, to explain. Right now I'm just doing default benchmarks so you can get an understanding on how you can get good performance without even doing any overclocking. Just as is, just put the CPU in there, let the board do its auto overclock, or let the precision boost from AMD take its place with this board's features, and then you get great performance. And this is what I'm getting without overclocking right now. Cinebench is doing some great rendering on the single and the multi-threaded scores. You can see right there how it compares to other CPUs. Again, I'm very pleased considering, that other processors, Intel Core i7s, that this is meant to compete against, like the Intel Core i7-9600, for example, or any other CPU that's in the same range of price. This is actually exceeding the performance of those, considering that it's less than $200. So between the board, the chip, and the graphics, I mean, you can really spend probably less than $1,000 easy, and then get the performance that you're getting with this. I'll add the latest pricing, by the way, on all of these parts below in the description if you're curious. So I'm giving you some gaming benchmarks here as I'm talking, just to give you a feel on the possibilities that you could get between the board, the processor, and a graphics card like this one. It's just a mainstream, latest mainstream graphics processor, the RX 5500 XT, you can see here. So this graphics card actually makes use of the PCI 4.0 slot. So that technology is being used by this graphics card, which is really showing me. I did a special separate graphics card review of this, and I'll add the links again at the end of this video so you guys can watch those if you want. I'm really impressed at how, if you get the right components, you don't need to spend like crazy, and you combine those to work in unison the way I have here, you get extremely good results. Okay, extremely good results. Look at Battlefield 5, for example. Again, with this board, CPU running at its default clock speeds, memory also running at default clock speeds, and I'm getting easily roughly about 90 frames per second on average, just at 1080p, right? Obviously, you can run this 1440p. You can put a higher end graphics card. You'll get all day long at 1440p, over 100 frames per second easy with this board again, and this chip. It's really a dream. So the features are there. You've got the features that I mentioned earlier for this board ready to go, including the NVMe slot. So that is going to just boost the performance and loading times like crazy. And then, of course, you've got all the support there for your overclocking, so you can take this to the next level, right? And that's really something that I like about this board, and I'll make a separate video, like I said, on just overclocking, okay, with this board. So here are the things that I like the most, and I mentioned already a bunch of these. And again, for under $200, I mean, what do you really need? I mean, it has so much to offer already, and it's using the latest technologies. So if you want to future-proof yourself and you're thinking about building something, here are the components that I used. You can click on any of these other videos right now to watch and see how they performed, again, with this board, the ASRock X570 Steel Legend. Definitely recommend it. I'll add the links to the pricing, again, like I said, in the description. I'd like to thank ASRock for providing it. Comment below. Let me know what you think. And again, thank you for watching.